Surging Sparks is almost here, so I'm getting a head start on covering deck lists to make sure that you're ready for when the new format comes out. Also, if you're wanting to start testing these decks early but aren't too sure how, make sure to stick around to the end of the video and I'll give you some tips on how you can do that. But let's dive into today's card, Hydreigon EX. At first glance, it might seem a little bit awkward with its pricey attack cost and having 3 heads, but by the end of the video, you're going to be seeing this card in a whole new light. Let's start with those 3 heads though. Everyone knows that 2 heads are better than 1, so a triple must be the best, especially when you use them to attack with Crashing Headbutt, dealing 200 damage to the active and eating the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. This can disrupt your opponent's game plan by discarding key pieces of their strategy before they get to draw into them. Now, the damage output of the attack isn't very groundbreaking though, but it's perfect for one-shotting utility Pokemon like Rotom V and Squawkabilly EX, and can be two-shotting into larger threats. If you're looking to one-shot the bigger guys though, pairing Dusknoir with Hydreigon is the way to go. Dusknoir can knock itself out and put 13 damage counters onto a Stage 2 Pokemon as an example, like Charizard or Dragapult, setting up that perfect math to finish them off with a headbutt. Plus, thanks to Hydreigon's dark typing, you can combine it with Petrant to poison yourself and bounce it into the active, then attach Binding Mochi on it, and you're doing 240 damage. This is perfect to one-shot basic EXs like Raging Bolt and Roaring Moon EX, while also getting that mill effect in. The other benefit of Petrant is that it moves you from the bench to the active, and Hydreigon's dark typing also gives access to Dark Patch for some energy acceleration. You can attach a dark energy to your benched Hydreigon, then easily move it to the active, helping you power up its attacks. Now let's talk about that second attack, Obsidian. It's got a pretty hefty attack cost requiring Dark, Steel, and Psychic, as well as a colorless energy, so 4 all up. But with Dark Patch helping us get there, and being a Stage 2 Pokemon giving us access to Neo Upper Energy, that can be our attachment for turn and gets us most of the way there. It's going to be paying for the Psychic and Steel cost of it, leaving just the colorless that we need to cover. Cards like Crispin can fetch 2 energy of different types from the deck, attaching one to Hydreigon, or even something like Janine's Secret Technique, letting you grab 2 dark energies from your deck and putting them onto 2 dark Pokemon, so ideally 2 Hydreigons, can definitely help us get there in a pinch. And don't forget the tool card Counter Gain releasing in Surging Sparks. When you're behind on prizes, it reduces the attack cost by 1 colorless energy, which is just what we need in this situation. Plus, since we mentioned we're running Dusknoir, it's pretty easy to control when you're behind on prizes. Oh, also, if you've been playing since the Sun and Moon era, you might already have copies of Counter Gain in your collection, since it's actually a reprinted card. Might be worth digging through your collection to see if you have some of those rotated pieces. Now that we've covered the attack cost, what does Obsidian actually do? Keeping to Hydreigon's 3-headed approach, you're going to be dealing 130 damage to the active Pokemon and 130 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It's a fantastic way to wipe out pre-evolutions before your opponent even gets set up. Or you could hit a Stage 2 EX in the active with Crashing Headbutt doing 200 on the previous turn, then Obsidian this turn, and it's going to finish off the active while also putting pressure on the bench. Just be cautious of Manaphy, which blocks bench damage, and don't make the mistake by targeting a Terra Pokemon, since those hats protect them for bench damage too. Even against big basics and Stage 1s, Obsidian can be just as lethal, especially when you pair it with Dusknoir. For example, if you're facing Gholdengo EX, you could soften up their active Gholdengo using Dusknoir, then Obsidian will finish them off, getting you to 260 all up, while also letting you take out their bench Greninja and a Gimme Ghoul for a 4-prize turn. Then you kind of just go, hey, shake my hand and ask if they want to go first or second, while waiting to get kicked in the shins. For big basics, the same logic applies though, as you could trigger Dusknoir to soften them up, then finish them off with Obsidian, and into Roaring Moon you could even just use Obsidian to make it so if they ever declare Frenzied Gouging, you're going to be getting 2 prizes too. That covers the core concept of Hydreigon. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Make sure to like and subscribe if you found it useful, but now let's jump into some deck lists so that you can pull off these game-winning plays. Now for the first deck list, it's a pretty straightforward one, kind of just using the concepts we've already talked about in the video. We've got the Dusknoir line in here, we've got the Hydreigons in here as a 4-1-3 count, 2-1-2 for your Dusknoirs, just to put out those damage counters, theoretically putting us behind on prizes to get our counter gains, our counter catchers online, which is always a solid option. The Petrant in here to be able to use Binding Mochi and bounce our Hydreigons into the active. For some draw power in this build though, I did go with Bibarel, so just as a 1-1 line. You could easily swap this out with Pidgeot if you prefer, but the reason for going with Bibarel is we've already got 2 other Stage 2s fighting for rare candy, so just slotting in a 3rd one didn't seem like a great idea, and Bibarel's an easy one to go into. It does also mean we can be using something like Evolution TM to get our Zwelos, our Dusclops out, or theoretically our Bibarel, so it's just a 3rd Stage 1 target to go into. So that's kind of why I went with it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the logic in the comments below. For some other inclusions though, Rotom V showing up, so same logic you'd see in like a Charizard EX deck. You don't have an attacker you want to use first turn of the game, so if you're going second, you just use Instant Charge to end your turn, or if you go first, use Instant Charge to end your turn, and you're drawing 3 cards, which is always solid. We do also have Forest Seal Stone in the deck because of that, so it means we can get any card from our deck once per game. It's effectively giving us a V-Star power without having a V-Star Pokemon in the deck. Serendipity EX showing up as just solid draw power. I feel like this card kind of just slots into any deck. If one of our guys gets knocked out, draw into 3 cards, and Manaphy for some bench protection so that if we run into like a Radiant Greninja or a Greninja EX, they aren't taking out our pre-evolutions before we get them set up. The rest of the deck, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. For energy acceleration, we did go for Crispin for this build since we do have the Psychic and Steel energy in the deck, so Crispin can grab those, put them onto our Hydreigon, attach for a turn using like a Neo Upper energy and then a counter gain, and we can be online as quick as 1 turn if we're behind on prizes, which we can do with our Duskmar. Just put ourselves behind on prizes, Crispin, Neo Upper, counter gain, snipe 3 things. Pretty solid. For the second deck though, we did go with Pidgeot EX. So with this one, we don't have the Duskmar line, they're not going to be fighting for candies. It seemed like an easy inclusion, just giving you that big boost in consistency with quick search, searching your deck for 1 card once per turn. Means we can be getting into our key pieces and energy acceleration in a pinch. For this one though, for the energy acceleration I should mention, we're using Janine's Secret Art since we are more heavily reliant on dark energy. You're going to be able to attach a dark energy from your deck to 2 of your Hydreigons in play. If one's in the active, it does poison it, bringing Binding Mochi online, so we do have an alternate method to get that effect in play, besides just using the Petrant. We do have Dark Patch in this build though, so the Petrant Dark Patch combo for Hydreigon is pretty busted, and the rest of the cards I feel like are very similar to the previous build. One inclusion I did have though, since you have Pidgeot, you can easily target tech cards. I slotted in Canceling Cologne. This means you could gust up a Manaphy into the active, Canceling Cologne it, and still hit pre-evolutions on their bench, even if they had bench protection in play. Also helps out into things like Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon and Mimikyu. The other way you could deal with Mimikyu though is just attack it with Swellios, 2 Dark Energy and a colorless, you do 80, Mimikyu's got 70 HP. With Dark Patch, we can easily get this charged up, so it's an alternate method we can get there. And for the third deck, this one's a little bit different than the other two, using Farigiraf EX as a secondary attacking option. Its ability Armor Tail makes it prevent all damage done to it by basic EX Pokemon. So matchups like Roaring Moon and Raging Bolt, they're gonna struggle. Roaring Moon obviously can just use Frenzied Gouging and knock you out, so that makes it a little bit trickier, but into Raging Bolt, it's kind of just a free win. Even if they have something like Canceling Cologne to get around this ability, just set up Farigiraf again, and the chance of them having another Canceling Cologne is pretty low. It does mean that you're in a position where you're either just setting up 1 Farigiraf in the active and nothing on your bench, so if they ever knock this out, it's game, so you do want to have a second Pokemon on your bench at some point. They knock that out, the new one goes into the active, they knock that out, that's 4 prizes, but if you get another Farigiraf in play and they don't have a second Canceling Cologne, it's kind of just checkmate at that position. To make sure that we can kind of just shrink our board down, we do have Professor Churro scenarios. So if you get into a position where you have 3 things in play, you can scoop one of them up to kind of have that 2 Pokemon play going where they knock out Farigiraf, new guy goes up, get another Farigiraf set up, and you're good to go. This deck also does include a Radiant Greninja just because it's a bit more reliant on the Dark Patches, so we ditch the Dark Patch, draw into 2 cards, or ditch the Dark Energy, draw into 2 cards, gets the Dark Patch online, having it at a higher count in this build with 4 copies in the list, since it does charge up our Hydreigons as well as our Farigiraf. You can technically use it for Serendipity as well, making it an attacking option, but like doing 100 damage to 1 thing on the bench, not great. We do have Neo Upper Energy, which we can use on Hydreigon to just hit 3 things. I think that's the better play, to be completely honest, and having the Psychic Energy to help out for the Farigiraf's attack cost. It is also helping out for Obsidian's attack cost. To cover the Steel Energy though, we only have Neo Upper Energy, so it's likely just a once, potentially twice per game attack you're going to be getting off if your Hydreigon can survive a hit. Now that's it for the decks that I've cooked up so far. Do you have different ideas for Hydreigon? I'd love to hear what you're working on in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and let me know, and subscribe to keep up with the content. I did say though, if you wanted to start testing out these decks early, I'd show you how you can do that, and we'll run you through that right now. So for all these deck lists, I'll have them linked in the description. It'll take you through to this page on Limitless. From there, just go up to this Tools button, click it, go Proxy Printer. It'll load this page up for you, and you can literally just hit this print button and get this 60 card deck. It's as easy as that. Limitless, you can print proxies of any of the cards, so if you only need a few of the copies, just remove the ones that you don't need or look up the ones that you want to add instead. Something to keep in mind though, these will be the Japanese version. Since the cards haven't officially been released in English yet, Limitless is usually a couple days behind after release. It'll be like early November where you can start printing the English versions. Proxies shouldn't be used at official events, it's technically illegal, so this is just for your playtesting purposes. If you do want to get the English versions though, you can go to the website PokemonProxies.com where they have these translated over for you and it's clearly marked that they're proxy cards. That process is a little bit tedious though, so I'm not going to go over the whole thing right now. I have done a video in the past covering it, which should be popping up on the screen right now, or here's another deck that YouTube thinks you'll like. Till next time though, stay golden, you Goombas.